Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. And continuing my journey through the year 1934 with John Ford, I have my friend Alice joining me. Alice, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to discuss.
I'm trying to think if I'm pretty sure I've had you on the show before, and if I have, it's been a while because I
Yeah, I
feel
don't
like I've
know.
doing
Yeah,
John Ford for forever.
I don't. You haven't had me on for John Ford. This is the first John Ford. I don't think I think we've talked about maybe like TV or something, but I don't know if we've
Okay.
done I don't think I've been part of your director videos because I've always wanted to, and it's just never worked out. So I'm excited
Well, so
to be
welcome,
here finally.
welcome to the Wasteland. So, for those who haven't tuned into the show before, we have three segments. So, we have our coming attractions for the weekend of December 15th, which we'll get to, which it's the thick of Oscar season and a ton of things are dumping. So, we'll talk about it. And our feature film is Judge Priest, which I thought sounded really cool. And then I watched it. I'm like, wow, that is not what I thought this was going to be. and then and then recommendations for everybody. So let's get things started with our coming attractions because this is indeed a big weekend. It's the one of 2 week. Well, basically, it's 2 weeks straight of just like stuff dumping for Oscar season, for the big holiday season. We have Wonka, Chicken Run, American Fiction, Zone of Interest, and even a Mark Wahlberg movie coming your way on Apple TV Plus. But Alice, what are you most excited for?
I'm I'm most intrigued by Wonka
Mhm.
because I think when it was announced, me and everyone else rolled our eyes and were like, "Do we need this? Yeah, do we need this?" And the answer is we absolutely do not need this. Let's just keep the 1970s Wonka and pretend that the Tim Burton one only exists for when your brain is altered and you need something easy to watch. But I I then saw, who was making it.
Yeah,
I do believe that Timothy Chalamet has the charisma for this character. I enjoy the Hugh Grant significantly. So when he was in it, and then I saw the trailer and I was like, huh, this looks pretty good.
Mhm.
So I love, for those who don't know, it's the same people behind Paddington, including the director who left Paddington 3 to do this movie, which to me must
I'm
mean,
I'm
yeah,
upset about that, but I guess I'll wait to pass judgment until Wonka comes out. So
well, that's my thing. I'm like, to leave the Paddington verse, which is the most wholesome and genuinely great series so far. We'll see how number 3 rolls out.
yeah,
To go over to Wonka, and obviously you can tell from the trailer, it has almost the exact same vibe and energy. It's
yeah,
like literally the same, magic and very whimsical, very Roald Dahl-y,
yeah.
in this case. So I'm like, if he made that decision to do a prequel on Wonka, again, no one cared about the prequel about Wonka, especially because of the whole Oompa Loompa element and it potentially being problematic. But again, I'm like, there had to be something. There had to be something in this script or this idea. And then I saw the trailer and it seems to be a musically, I don't know if it's a full musical or there'll be just
I
a
think
couple
it's a
of
full
like,
musical, but Hollywood doesn't have the bravery to sell anything as a full musical. So
okay, because that is okay, really quick tangent, but I don't know if anyone's been watching the Mean Girls trailers, but they have been bizarre because it's the musical. The whole
it's
point is
a
that it's the
musical,
musical.
people. So be prepared. There's a lot of
Yeah.
singing.
Yeah, and because even you can tell in the scenes they show when the songs are happening, but it's like if I didn't know it was a musical, I would just think it's a remake. And so they are not advertising the fact that it's a music. It's just a bizarre choice to me. So
Well,
we'll
when
talk about
both
that in January.
Sweeney Todd and Into the Woods came out, neither of them made it seem like they were musicals. And it's just like, wow,
I don't know
people.
why. Meanwhile, you have Dix the musical, which is like
Well,
strongly advertising its musicalness.
well, based off of the title, you
Yeah,
definitely is a musical.
yeah,
But like,
exactly.
my feelings on Wonka are this.
Yes,
I
yes.
love, love, love Paddington. And like that's one of the only reasons why I was excited about this movie at all.
Yeah,
And then you watch the trailers and it seems silly and whimsical. And
yes.
it seems like even if it's not a great film, it'll be a fun time.
That's what I mean. It
Yeah.
actually seems like the second trailer came out and I saw it at the movies, and there was an extended moment with Hugh Grant's Oompa Loompa character, and it made
Yeah.
me laugh a few times.
Oh, sorry. The only other reason I was excited
Yeah.
about this movie besides Paddington is because of should have been nominated for Paddington actor Hugh Grant. Because,
Yes.
oh my God, I love Hugh Grant so much.
Mm-hmm.
I never really
Mm-hmm.
thought of Hugh Grant a whole lot when I was younger. I'm like, I didn't watch a lot of those films, but like now I'm a huge fan of Four Weddings and a Funeral
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And of course, Love Actually. But like what he's been doing in his later career at this point is just absolute magic.
Oh
And
my goodness.
if you're not gonna have actual little people playing the Oompa Loompas and you're gonna
Yeah.
do some weird CGI thing,
Mm.
getting the grumpiest British actor there, Hugh Grant, is the funniest thing possible.
I just want to know how they pitched it to him.
Well, apparently King was like, I'm just like, I wanted a cranky, like, I just imagine Hugh's just this cranky man. He's just gonna be a
Yeah.
cranky Oompa Loompa, and that's what sold me on pitching him
I
this
think
movie.
I think that's the only way you can make the Oompa Loompas work. Because otherwise, if you, for example, do what they did in the 2005 Charlie and the Chocolate Factory film, that's that was a weird. That was just a weird.
Well, that movie's just a weird.
Yeah, it
So,
is. It is. And so this way, it's like it actually makes them characters and not just
mm,
these like people in the background that are servants slash slaves. And we're just not
Oompa,
going to talk about it.
Doom,
Yeah. And
Oompa,
horrifying. And that's the
Doom.
other thing. They're
Yeah,
definitely nightmare fuel.
yeah.
Um, this way, it's like there's a character that potentially could be a story behind it. I don't know if the idea is that all Oompa Loompas are Hugh Grant or if he's just the one Oompa
Oh my
Loompa we get to
God.
know in the
If we
film.
wind up getting a whole entire sea of Hugh Grant Oompa Loompas.
Oh, that could be amazing or terrible. But that's what I mean. I think this film could
Yeah.
be amazing or terrible. There's no in between. This
It's
isn't a
funny
film I
because I've
feel.
heard generally
Yeah.
really good social media reactions, except
I
for
never trust.
two,
I never ever trust the
except
early reactions.
for two people that I
Yeah.
know who
Okay.
absolutely hated it. Like one of the Joe who runs guide2movies.com, who I write
Mm-mm.
for, hated it and said it's one of the worst movies he's seen all year. But then like everybody else's reactions have been like, this is so charming and Timothy Chalamet's so great. And I was
Mm.
like, they had the press screening at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, I got a
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so no, I didn't get to go to the Wonka
Yeah.
test screening.
Yeah.
So I'll be seeing it like everybody else come December 15th. So
Yeah.
we shall
Very
see how
fair.
it turns out.
We shall
Now,
see.
there was only one movie for me to pick from this,
Mm-hmm.
and that is Chicken Run: Dawn of the Nugget, because I am a humongous Chicken Run fan. I
Who
love
isn't? That's
love
my
chicken.
question.
Those who haven't watched it. Um, so I've loved Chicken Run so much since I was a kid. I thought it like I didn't feel as bad of like them not bringing back uh Mel Gibson per
Mm.
se, but like I did feel bad that they didn't bring back
Yeah.
the main actress.
Yeah.
But because what is it, Tandy Newton? Is
Tandy
it?
Newton. Yeah.
And then what, Zachary Levi? I'm like, oddly enough, that's an interesting replacement for Mel Gibson.
Yeah. I feel like when they cast Zachary Levi, that was before everything.
Feel like we were
So
trying to avoid stuff like this, and then we walked right into it.
he was just an affable, Shazam slash Flynn
Yeah,
Rider, and it was all good. And now the thing is, it takes a long time to make an Aardman film,
yeah.
and in that time, it was a poor choice.
He's made his beliefs on a lot of things known since then.
Yes.
And a lot of people are mad at him. But
Yep.
I love Aardman so much. And
Mm-hmm.
this just when I heard that they're finally making a Chicken Run sequel, I
I
lost it.
know.
I'm just
I
like,
know.
yes.
I feel like Aardman hasn't done anything in such a long time. And so
Early Man.
that was ages ago though. And even
That
then that
was
didn't
wasn't that
really like
2017 or something?
yeah, it was ages ago.
6 years ago.
Yeah. And like
The
I
only thing that I
understand
remember about that is Rob Brydon being one of the announcers.
2018. It was 2018. But
Okay.
even then it's like it was ages ago and it definitely did
That was
not.
pre-COVID. It all felt like it was ages ago in the
Yeah. I mean,
before
I
time.
guess there was the Shaun the Sheep sequel, actually. I
Oh,
totally forgot about that.
Shaun the Sheep Farmageddon was one of my
Yeah, that was
top
actually
five
a very
films,
good movie.
one of
That
my
was a
top
very good
five films
movie.
of 2020. And I
That was an
proudly
excellent
put that
film.
in my SIftPop writer's room. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, what of it? I had Farmageddon in here, and Wolf
Yep.
Walkers was my number one. So yeah, animation for life.
Yep, pretty much. But yeah, so that was the last one, and that was 2019. So
Yeah.
it's not like that was still a while ago. And I feel like, yeah, Chicken Run. The point is they haven't touched like again, I understand Shaun the Sheep is a bigger franchise, but let's be honest, the two big Aardman things are Wallace and Gromit and Chicken Run. Those are
Yep.
like iconic, beyond iconic. And
Mhm.
so for it to finally get a sequel, I have many people around me who are deep seated, like Chicken Run obsessives. And so they constantly listen to the theme song and everything, as who wouldn't? Because it's a
Mhm.
fantastic score. It's a great film. And I think everyone in our sort of generation grew up on it. And so to get a sequel, I'm very worried. I'm so worried. Like, I really hope it's good.
Oh yeah, it's like sitting there. Have you seen the movie Fanboys about that group of friends who tried to watch? And they're all sitting
Yep,
there right
yep.
before the movie's about to start. It's like, what if it's bad? Because
Yeah.
Alice, you saying that right now was the first time I even considered that was a possibility. So just
Yeah.
assume that this is going to be perfection. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's Aardman. They always hit. I have not all the films, even if they're not like amazing, they've always been good. I've never seen a bad Aardman production, but there's a first time for everything,
and
especially when
hopefully
you
it's not
do
this one.
a long seated sequel. So I'm just everyone keep everything crossed. Everything
Oh, I
crossed.
just remember they did a Christmas short for Netflix a couple of years
Mm.
ago. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, yeah.
They basically just make everything that they make now in the US just comes out on Netflix.
Yeah, well,
So,
they have the Netflix deal, so. But if you want to
oh,
watch there's a series of like the Wallace and Gromit shorts. The like I can't remember what they're called. It's like something contraptions or something, and it's like literally 5-minute shorts. You can only get that on Apple TV Plus. We bought them all and we watched them
nice.
because they're
I
really
know
fun.
Amazon Prime has the four like
Mm, mm,
famous shorts,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm definitely gonna buy them because I want to own them.
yeah.
So there you go.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But those are our coming attractions. Time to
Yes.
talk about Judge Priest. So
Yeah.
a little bit of background. So this film is from 1934, very obviously so. Takes place in 1890, very obviously so. This is based off of Irvin S. Cobb's Judge Priest character, who apparently was a very famous character that this cartoonist created and this humorist created. And is he Foghorn Leghorn? You'll find out. That's the vibe I was getting.
Mm-hmm.
And this film was actually remade by John Ford himself in 1953 called The Sun Shines Bright. So when I inevitably get to that in probably August, I'll talk about that then.
Mm-hmm.
This did star Hattie McDaniel. This was her first big film role. So
Yep.
that was a big deal. Will Rogers became a box office star in no small
Mm-hmm.
part because of this film. And apparently he starred in 5 out of 7 of Fox's biggest box office hits this year, 1934. So he's starred in 5 Fox
Mm-hmm.
films. And
Yep.
this particularly became a big box office hit. And Stepin Fetchit, who plays the black man who gets put on trial at the very beginning of the film and then like basically just palling around the whole rest of the film, ad-libbed most of his role.
Yep.
And so, and apparently he was notorious for messing around with Hollywood at big parties and stuff like that. And who could blame him? Because at that point, but getting into the actual film, Alice, what are your general thoughts?
Oh, also we should mention that this was John Ford said toward the end of his life that this was his most favorite film that he ever made.
That disappoints me.
I think it's very important that we say that. I was looking at the trivia after having seen the film, and it said, yeah, I'll find it right now. But essentially, he mentioned that, yeah. Oh, in a 1972 interview, a year before he died, director John Ford stated that this was his favorite film.
Let's pretend
And
that he
and we all
was
know that John
gone.
Ford has he was fully in senility. What did I think? To answer your question, I'm so conflicted because who doesn't enjoy a courtroom story, right? If it's done well. And a good chunk of this film, because it's not a long film, it's only an hour and 20 minutes. It's
Yep.
very quick. And does it have an ending? That's a fantastic question. But I think that there's like elements of the story which I enjoyed, and I didn't not enjoy this overall film,
Mhm.
but I'm extremely conflicted about many parts as well as the overall context
Yep.
of the film as it exists. Shane?
So as I was watching this, I thought this would be very interesting to talk to you, Alice,
Yeah.
about because you are not an American.
No.
And as an American watching this film and just seeing in a lot of these early John Ford's film, this fascination with like the Confederacy.
Yeah.
In 2023 when
Yeah. No,
in the
that's a
immortal
weird
words of
thing.
in the immortal words of the Big Lebowski, it's like the bomb's lost, and
Yeah.
it's still the fact that people won't let that go, and it's been 170 years, probably
Yep.
somewhere around there.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
The insane amount of like Confederacy nostalgia in this movie was perturbing to me. And this movie came out 70 years after the Confederacy lost. And it's just like, why?
Remind me, was John Ford Southern? Because he was from Maine, right?
Like, that's the thing. He doesn't give off the vibe that he was from the South.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he was from Maine. And I mean, correct, I'm not all the way up there on the US geography. Maine's not in the South. Maine's
Maine
very
is
much not
like
in the
one of the
no.
most not South.
Yeah, it's like Massachusetts-y way, right? Like it's
Well,
like
Maine is geographically one of the most northern states you could
yeah,
possibly have,
okay.
besides Alaska.
So
So,
so I am so curious because this whole film, we're spoiling. Are we spoiling?
yes. Yep.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to skip ahead to essentially the crux of this film, where the whole thing is based upon how proud this entire Kentucky town
Yep.
is of its Confederacy state, right? And how everyone fought in the war, and it was a very honorable thing to fight for the Confederacy. And the film literally ends on the thesis where this Unioner, this Northerner who's on trial, is a good guy because he fought for the Confederacy. And he was like very honorable and fought against the Union and for the Confederacy. And therefore everyone like immediately lets him off and celebrates and blah, 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 blah. And it literally ends with a parade for the Confederacy. And the whole time I'm sitting there being like, you what? Because literally the entirety of the Confederacy is slaves. Like, how is this being presented as the noble thing to have been part of when you also have who were most likely slave characters and are now servant characters in quite intense prominence, one of whom is he meant to have a disability of some kind, or is that just meant to be
this is
funny
a
comedy
actor in John Ford's films who always plays a simpleton comic relief character.
Yeah. Okay, so he is meant to be something not there. Yeah, because I was like, and then you have future Oscar winner Hattie McDaniel, who I also read very interestingly in the trivia. The what was his name again? Stepin Fetchit. He and Hattie McDaniel had some problems on set because what John Ford did was he took scenes that Stepin Fetchit was meant to be in and he made Hattie McDaniel's role bigger than it was originally meant to be, putting the two main black characters at odds with each other. And so apparently they had some issues with each other on set. And it is just exceptionally problematic, which is the way in which the morality is presented in this movie. Again, when you so clearly have probable ex-slaves and now servants as major characters who sing about how happy they are serving the white people. Like there's that whole song break where they literally are like, we are really happy, and I can't say the rest of the lyrics, but like it's I was just sitting there being like, and they don't really have any characterization beyond how kind the white people are. That's literally their characterization.
And like trying to cheer up Judge Priest,
who's like the really nice white person who's like friends with his servants, and saves Stepin Fetchit's character from going to jail for vagrancy because he likes fishing and he's good at fishing. And I'm just like, okay. So
his character is just a grating caricature at this point, who keeps popping up and stuff. And this film is so silly. It's like so ridiculously silly and stupid at times, where it's just like it's like, look at that goat eating your stuff. It's just like, what are you talking about? And then a camera pans, like there's literally a goat just randomly in his yard eating his stuff. I'm just like, why?
But again, going to the end, there's this the whole film culminates in this. For example, there's this whole storyline that's just never ever taken care of, which is, or there's never any closure to it, which is the fact that basically the villain of the piece, who is the senator, and he's trying to get Judge Priest's job, and he is like, you can't be impartial in this because of your you like this guy's on trial, and so he puts him off the bench. So that whole thing, how he's vying for his job and wants to get, that's never solved. It's just like, I guess, but even the actual trial, so the whole thing is about the trial. This guy's on trial, but he's so honorable, he won't just say, oh no, they like badmouthed my daughter, so I punched him, and then in revenge they tried to beat me up, and then I used his barber knife. Like, I think no one at any point was like, he got stabbed with a barber knife and he's a barber. Like, who had the knife out? Okay, let's think
Yeah.
about it a little bit. Critical thinking, people. But also, so he's like so honorable he won't do it, but then at the end when the reverend goes against his vow of silence because he's allowed to because he wasn't technically a priest at the time, he's like, no, he fought so hard for the Confederacy, and that man that fought so hard is this guy who's on trial, and the whole courtroom erupts and is like, oh, celebrate, 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 parade, end of film. And I'm just like, what? Wait, what?
Like, from a filmic perspective, it's a big, swelling, emotional moment.
Yeah.
And then you take a step back and think of the context, and you're just like,
but
wait.
even from a filmic perspective, there's no proper closure. I feel like we're missing
like the actual
ending
scene is like structured in a powerful way.
Yeah.
Boom, Dixieland. And then the movie's over.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just like, okay, so she's just found, the main love interest to the young couple, the female love interest the whole time. She's like she's nobody. She doesn't have a father.
That story at all.
I just feel like there was a lot of the film, when you say that it was, based on like a cartoonist and all that sort of thing, I can tell. Like this whole thing feels like a comic strip. Yeah. And I feel like if it's a film, it's missing like an hour, not an hour, maybe like 40 minutes of character development and storyline. Because I just feel like things were just like moving and happening. And Judge Priest, again, it's such a strange bit where it's just introduced that his whole family died and he's like visiting the grave.
There's like there's a couple of casual moments of like deep resonant scenes, and you're just like, right after the goat, which it basically was.
Yeah, like, exactly. Like he walks in and has a moment,
and then whole family's dead.
Yeah, he just has a moment talking to the like frame of his family, and you're like, oh, are they dead? And then it really hammers it home where it's like, oh yeah, they're dead because he's going to their grave.
And Powell's performance, like so much, Will Rogers' performance is so much of like silly, and then occasionally like, oh, yeah, like there's a moment where it's like he's legit acting here, and then just silly. Like he does that impression like he's in the bushes and he's basically talking.
Oh my goodness!
And I'm just like, oh my god,
I know.
Because like he's trying to pretend to be
Poindexter.
And I'm just like, okay, this is great, but whatever. And what's so fascinating is this movie was a giant box office hit, and people were praising Will Rogers all over the place for his amazing performance. I'm just like,
he died the next year too after it came out.
I didn't realize that. That's very sad.
It is very sad. It seems like he had this huge swell of like success, and then he died in a plane crash. It was I was like, oh, okay.
Oh my.
Like, yeah, I was just looking at it before, but
he was only 55.
Yeah,
he looked older.
I mean, I think that's more of because of the like people back then did look older than they do now.
Everybody lived a harder life back then.
No, I think they just lived shorter lives.
They lived
and also they all smoked and drank all the time and weren't like, this is very bad for you. Like
in general, I really wasn't a fan of this film, and this is back-to-back films that Rogers starred in for I'm just not a fan of. And I feel like both of them just felt like they lacked any sense of narrative thrust or context or depth. And
I find it so interesting that this is a John Ford film. You know what I mean? Because the films that people know John Ford for, they all have a lot of artistic intent behind
Yes.
them. I mean, there's obviously, everybody will remember from the most recent film, The Fabelmans, that, you know, there's that whole scene with John Ford where he's talking about the horizon and he's like, it's not interesting. And so it's like,
Where's the horizon?
yeah, exactly. Where's the
The top of
horizon?
the frame. That's
Yeah.
interesting. It's at the
Yeah.
bottom of the frame. That's interesting. It's in the middle of the frame. It's boring as shit.
Yeah, exactly. And so the whole scene is meant to be an antithesis of what John Ford was, which was artistic intent, like one of the first directors to really have artistic intent, and do more than just point and shoot. And this whole film is very point and shoot. It's very strange as a film because, again, I didn't not enjoy it's a weird thing for me to say. Like, I didn't not enjoy myself because I think there was elements where if you know, didn't set it in the whole Confederacy context and ironed out a lot of the character elements and like recontextualize the entire thing, but at its base, you know, it could have been quite an interesting film. And but the whole time I was like, this is real bad. And again, the fact that it was a John Ford film didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense in my head because it could have been done by any director in the 30s. It was strange that it was a John Ford film. And then for me to read that that was his favorite film, I was like, interesting choice. Interesting. Was it just the most fun you had on a set? Because I'm hoping that that's what it means. It could have been because it probably was quite a whimsical set, but
because like
again,
watched,
I think
you know, Stagecoach and The Searchers, and just no, this isn't. And that's the thing. I have maybe watched 3 films that I have thought have been great films up to this point, and I've watched dozens of John Ford films at this point. And there's definitely plenty of them that feel like they're just workmen projects. And this feels like one of them.
Exactly. But apparently it wasn't.
Apparently this is a passion project.
This is a passion project. But I just, it was just, it's such an interesting film to watch with the modern sensibility and the modern understanding. And the fact that he remade this, I didn't know that. I am very curious what changes he made 20 years later, essentially. Because I did see, just quickly looking it up, that they made the character of Judge Priest a lot older, which I think could work quite nicely. And again, I don't know what the plan was with the whole Confederacy element, because I think objectively it's okay to say, no, the Confederacy was wrong.
Well, I saw in the remake, they were supposed to have a scene where they tried to lynch Poindexter, and he stops them. And that's like a big character moment for Judge Priest, but the studio made him cut that out of the film.
Okay, so I don't have a lot of hope for oh, and it looks like Stepin Fetchit literally plays the same character. Interesting.
I'm asking you now, live, as we record this, do you want to come back in August to do that episode?
I mean, yeah. I think that's important for continuation of the storyline.
So in 8 months, Alice will be back specifically for that episode, so that we can talk about the same movie over again.
And the movie is only 10 minutes longer, which makes me be like, okay, what did they change? It seems it's more of a Western, you know, and less of a Southern. So potentially, let's just, come on, guys. It's pretty obvious to me, even in the 30s. I understand it was a long time ago, but come on, writing it. Was there no point where people were like, he's the hero because he supported slavery? You know what I mean? Like, at the end of it, the crux of the issue I have with this entire film is that the good guys are the ones who wanted for slavery. And at the same time, you have a pretty huge cast of Black actors in the film who are really happy with where they are, which we almost are certain was not the case.
It's zippity-doo-dah all over again.
It is well, you know what's so interesting is that Hattie McDaniel is in Song of the South. And so apparently this was just the thought process of the time. People watch these films.
Yep.
People back then were like, no, they were happy slaves. They were singing all the time about
Well,
happy
Alice,
slaves.
I don't know if you listen to a lot of political discourse from America, but there are a lot of politicians starting to try to argue that, slavery was good for Black people because they learned a lot of skills.
Look, I hate to judge an entire country all the time.
And so the sensibilities haven't always changed. And look at us 90 years after this.
90 years after this, however
this
long after the Civil War. Yeah.
But anyway.
So yeah, I'd say
completely different.
Yeah, it was just, I think, going into it similar to you, it's not what I thought it was going to be. I read the thing, I was like, oh, because at the same time we were getting films like It's a Wonderful Life and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and all these sort of films where I'm like, oh, it'll be like this, it'll be a great sort of film, 12 Angry Men and like all that sort of thing, or like To Kill a Mockingbird, like interesting films, but this is going to be more zany. Fantastic.
Like the same year, or within a year earlier of this, John Ford had a film nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
And like that film was really interesting.
Yeah.
And then just this. It's just like, and he has a very interesting filmography, which will be continued on my next episode.
Yes.
We'll be watching The Whole Town's Talking. And coming back on for that episode is my buddy Rowan. So Rowan's in my 6-person rotation to help get me through all these John Ford films. So
fair enough.
It'll be interesting as we keep on going through, and it's going to be until March when I start getting to like Stagecoach and Young Mr. Lincoln and The Grapes of Wrath. So we'll be getting there. But still,
you're getting there. You're getting there.
Getting there.
That's like me and my friends who are going through the entirety of the Disney catalog.
Yeah.
And we're only on the 70s. And there were a lot of poor choices made in the 70s with the films. So many animal films where it's like a zany animal situation, like a donkey that plays football, or a cat that like is from outer space. Like, it's just, and we're just being like, we just need to get to 1989. We just need to get to 1989.
Need to get to a Little Mermaid.
We need to get to the golden age. We're so close. We're so close yet so far. Here and there we have some like breaths of fresh air, but like Robin Hood, but just every now we just have to get through it. So similar to you, you just got to get to the good stuff. It's coming. And
then I'll have a whole year still of John Ford films. So, but we're making our way through as we hit mid-December with this particular episode. But we have one more segment for everybody, which is some recommendations. So I definitely wouldn't recommend Judge Priest, but I do recommend these films. But Alice, what would you like to recommend to everybody?
Well, this is a recommendation with an asterisk on the end, which I will explain.
This movie is not for everybody.
No, it's not for everybody, and it's not to watch with everybody. So I'm going to recommend Saltburn, which is the new Emerald Fennell film. I saw it on Thursday. It is now Saturday, and I am still trying to figure out my thoughts on it, which is a good thing because I have landed on, I really liked it. I really did. I think that there is so much going on in this film. And I mean, for anyone that's seen Promising Young Woman, it's a similar, I would say, you have to be in a very similar spot mentally. It
has a similar attitude.
Yes, I think that's an excellent way of that's an excellent way of wording it. A very similar attitude. But where Promising Young Woman is a little bit, say, controversial with how it depicts certain things, Saltburn just went all the way. Where, maybe Promising Young Woman was like 65. This one was just hardcore 100.
Yep.
Do not go see this with family members. Just do not go see this with family members. Potentially don't go see this with your significant other.
How kinky are you?
Yeah, I think that's...
how you handle some of the things in this movie.
I would also say this isn't a film you want to have eaten before going in to see.
Probably not.
Popcorn's okay because it's it's quite settling as a food, but I would say try and get through it before halfway through the movie. Before they reach Saltburn, try and finish your popcorn because you're not going to want to touch it. You're not going to want to touch it afterwards. Having said all of that,
might be a reflection on you.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yep. Fair enough. Fair enough. But
you might fit
having
in
said all that. Yeah, well, that's true. You might have no issue. And then, there are many therapists that you can engage in. Having said all of that, I know I'm focusing on these elements. I think it's very important to know that this is not a film for the faint of heart visually, mentally as well. But I think that, it's one of those films where this idea has already been explored a lot in cinema in the last couple of years and will continue to be explored in upcoming films based on, the general consensus of the public at the moment. I think it's an exceptionally interesting idea to be exploring, and this is an exceptionally interesting way to explore it. Once again, Emerald Fennell does a very interesting look into that 2000s nostalgia, and nostalgia I don't think many of us thought would ever come up, but does work exceedingly well in this context. And I think Barry Keoghan, he's this close to becoming one of the biggest actors working right now. Like, he already is, I think, in the indie circuit and in these kind of level films, and people who like film already know him and know him to be an exceptional actor. But I think he's this close to basically being that guy. I think a lot of people are going to be going into this film for Jacob Elordi and coming out for Barry Keoghan, not just because of the final scene.
This is certainly one of the most interesting and memorable final scenes you're going to find in any movie this year. So
correct. And yet you will be. You'll just kind of walk out thinking about it, and you'll never be able to listen to Murder on the Dance Floor the same way again. Having said all of that, it is such an interesting film. I think that there's going to be so much study put into it. There's going to be so many essays written about it. Emerald Fennell is so intelligent, and I think even if this isn't going to be everybody's cup of tea, I'm just going to put this out there. Promising Young Woman overall came out relatively positive. Generally, I can see this being a lot more divisive, but I think it'll incite a lot of very interesting conversation, which I think to me immediately makes this film a success, given what it is. And for the love of God, this is not a summer romance movie. Do not go in thinking that the marketing and everything puts this as like a fun indie summer romance. It is not. It is not that type of film. It is so much more than that. I would say go in more expecting Promising Young Woman, Don't Worry, Darling. Like, that is the mental space you have to be in with the grotesque level that you just have to buckle in for. I literally hid behind my cardigan for some of it because I couldn't. And it's, you know what it does? This film does the thing where normally a lesser film would show you the beginnings of these scenes and then cut away. It doesn't. It really doesn't cut away. When you're like, It should cut away now, it stays there. So you really have to be comfortable with who you're seeing this film with, because you're going to become a lot closer as a result.
Yes. Like that time I took my mom to go see Killing of a Sacred Deer because she invited herself. And I warned her.
Another Barry Keoghan film.
Yeah, I'm like, Mom, this is weird. You're not going to like this. And she's like, I don't want to go alone. And I'm like,
I want to go alone.
And I certainly did when Nicole Kidman was giving an unenthusiastic hand job for information as I was sitting next to my mother. But so
do not go see this with your parents. Do not go see. You could probably get away with your siblings. Parents is no go. Parents and grandparents, keep them as far away from this film as you physically can.
I just watched Napoleon with my brother, and that movie is like moderately horny and weird.
Yeah,
certainly not anywhere near close to Saltburn though.
Horny and weird.
Yeah,
that's the way. Yeah, that's the tagline.
What was funny is because like I got the vibe of what Saltburn was supposed to.
Yes. 100%.
I went to go see it with some of our SIftPop friends in New York, and I was there with Foster Robert. And beforehand, I turned to Foster and Robert gave me crap for this, but I said, Saltburn better be horny and it better be weird.
Yeah.
And then after the movie was over, Robert turned and was like, you happy? And I'm like, that was exactly what I wanted it to be.
Yeah. Exactly. Honestly, if you're going to put, on the Blu-ray cover, they should just put horny and weird.
Yep.
And horny is both a metaphor and not a metaphor. So there you go.
There you go. So usually what I do is I have 3 recommendations. One new film release, 1 film off my watch list, and 1 rewatch. And my new release is Godzilla Minus One. Because this movie is a towering achievement in what you can do with a creature feature, because this movie puts all of the Warner Brothers ones to shame. Because 1, I actually cared about human beings in this movie.
What?
Yeah. Taking time and spending time with them and making them feel like actual human beings and not running gags and giving them interesting context to play out actual character arcs. And I'm like, huh. And you know what? I still got Godzilla with nuclear blast that basically leveled Tokyo and for the record, this movie was made for $15 million.
That's crazy. It looks so good in the clips I've seen.
Looks so good. Like watching it in the theater, the opening scene is terrifying. And the film really understands was Takashi Yamazaki, I think, the director, really understands how to capture the scale of Godzilla and how to make you feel so small in the whole context of it. And it's such a fascinating reboot of the franchise, because it really is like the new origin story of Godzilla. And this takes place right on the heels of World War II, within a year or two, right there. And it's so good. It's so amazing. And
it's almost like the Japanese are the ones who should tell Godzilla stories.
Wait, what?
I know. It's almost like they are the only ones that get
Alice?
it. But Shane, we're about to get Monarch. I mean, that's perfect, isn't it? That looks so good.
Well,
I am being sarcastic.
Actually, Monarch is actually fascinating.
Is it? I'm so uninterested because I've gotten so uninterested with the films.
Because it's more of this conspiracy theory thriller that has some monsters in it. And I actually care about Wyatt / Kurt Russell's character, because they're playing the same character in different times.
I mean, that makes sense. How long until that happens with Denzel and John David Washington?
It works so perfectly, though. But they also have Durs from Workaholics being a young John Goodman. And that is weird to me. No,
I think it's just because he's from Workaholics.
Side recommend, though. I am actually really enjoying Monarch so far.
Do you think it's important for me to have seen Godzilla versus Kong? Because I don't want to watch that. But
I don't think
this is actually good.
That. If you watch the 2014 Godzilla, I think that's what has given context to this. And maybe a little of Kong Skull Island.
I've seen those two, but then Kong Skull Island turned me off. I was like, I don't care. So I keep being like, I'll get to it.
And
yeah. I was just like, I'll get to Godzilla versus Kong. And then I just never got to it. And now, years have passed.
No, legitimately, I think Godzilla Minus One is probably the best Godzilla movie since the first Godzilla movie.
And it's insane that they were able to do it. But you know what? It's not insane. It's not insane because there was a movie recently and it had a very, relatively small budget, and yet it used the CGI when it needs to use the CGI, and it uses practical effects when it can, which honestly, that should be the way all film works.
I still can't believe this movie only cost $15 million looking at it. but like it worked and it looked great.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
wonders. My next one is, this is off my watch list because I'm in the process of, just at the beginning of my process as recording this, of getting through my 1911 films for my Cinematic Wasteland podcast. So I started with Dante's Inferno, which is actually an hour and 12-minute film from 1911. And it's
Yeah.
fascinating. The amount of filmmaking prowess, the amount of character design, the makeup, the costuming, the just elaborate construction of the Inferno and the different levels of hell is so fully realized in this film and so interesting. And it's actually kind of shocking that this film came out so long ago, like over 110 years ago. And it's a really interesting experience. And especially if you really love the epic poem, and I think it really captures the spirit of it. And it's really I'm not surprised because like basically what I do is I have this one website and I take the top 25 films from each year, watch them all, break down to my top 10, and that's what I do my podcast on.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised this was the top one on the list because like it's a really impressive feat what they were able to do with this film. So definitely would recommend for all you cinephiles out there. It's on YouTube. So for free. And then my rewatch, which I do have this on Criterion. So Rowan and I are, for the episode we're going to be recording this weekend for Rowan in the Wasteland, doing Alfred Hitchcock's Rebecca. And so I watched the new Rebecca first and was like, this is trash. And then I watched the original Rebecca. I'm like, wow, that really was trash because this is amazing. And just, just seeing Laurence Olivier, Joan Fontaine, even like George Sanders, who's such a great character actor, and also Shere Khan, the original from Jungle Book, that voice. Cast is great. The mystery about it. This is legitimately one of my top 5 Hitchcock films. Love it.
Wow.
And this was definitely something that I really enjoyed rewatching for a second time for our podcast. I think I enjoyed it considerably more than Rowan based off of his letterbox, but we're going to have that conversation and you all should listen to it. So shameless plugs all around. But Alice, thank you so much for coming on, and also agreeing for coming on in 8 more months when we talk about the same movie all over again.
I wonder if it'll have a nice rose-colored sheen in 8 months in my head. But we'll see.
It'll certainly have like 20 extra years of filmmaking advancement, so that'll be interesting.
No, I mean this one. I wonder if like what if the new one is good. The new one, the new 1950s version is good. I wonder if that might make this one better in context. We shall see. I'm very intrigued.
And we'll find out. But thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.